Welcome to today's lecture. Today, we will be discussing matrix approximation by random sampling. So, the agenda for today's lecture is that first we will uh, start with a general setup. So, first we will start with a general setup of matrix approximation using random sampling. Then we will look at a particular case where we use the random sampling method, that is for matrix multiplication. We have already seen this before, but we'll be looking at it in some detail today, where specifically we will be using the matrix Bernstein inequality to analyze the algorithm. Okay, so we discussed the matrix Bernstein inequality in the last lecture, and because we'll be using it again today, and just for revision, just state it once. So what the matrix Bernstein inequality basically says is that suppose we have a sequence Sk of independent random matrices with common dimension. I mean, they are all of the same dimension. So called common dimension, we have d1 cross d2. Okay. So this is the first consideration. The second consideration is that they are all zero mean and all of them are bounded. So when we say bounded, so this denotes spectral norm. Okay, I mean for the matrix notation we use this to denote the spectral norm. Next, if we denote Z or Z as the sum of these independent random matrices, I mean these are just semantics. We can also define a variance statistic since the matrix can be rectangular as well. Okay. Then the matrix Bernstein inequality tells us two things. The first thing is that the expected value of the spectral norm of Z, that is the sum of those matrices, is upper bounded by this quantity. And further, it also gives us tail bounds on the spectral norm as follows. V of Z plus L T by 3. Okay, so we in the last class we looked at the sketch of the proof for this. We did not look at the proof in great detail because we said that the ideas on the proof are the same that are being used for proving the Chernoff form. So we did not look at it in great detail. We just briefly breezed through the proof. So today we will be looking at one of the applications of the matrix-Bernstein inequality. In the first lecture of when we discussed the matrix concentration inequality, we looked at the proof. I mean, we looked at one more application of the Bernstein inequality. If you remember, we discussed the covariance estimator. Okay, using sampling. So that we discussed. So today we will be discussing one more application of the matrix Bernstein inequality. Okay. So next we will move to The next topic will be, or the main agenda for today is matrix approximation by random sampling. We have already seen an instance of the matrix approximation when we use by sampling when we looked at the matrix multiplication algorithm. But today we will briefly be discussing a very general case. Okay, so the problem setup, or what we want, our goal is that B is the target matrix that we want to approximate. Okay, V is the random matrix that we want to approximate. So when we do this, and what the general excuse me. So what the general matrix approximation by random sampling method, the first step is that we want to represent the target as a sum of simple matrices. Okay, what simple actually means, it will vary from one application to the other, but what we want to do is something like this. Okay, B is our target matrix that we want to approximate. We will decompose the matrix into a finite sum, and we will then basically be sampling quantities from this sum. So when we have to do sampling, we need a set of sampling probabilities. Okay, since we had decomposed it into n, so we will have pi equals 1. The other thing that we need is that pi should be greater than 0. It's a non-zero probability of sampling each component for all I is equal to 1 to n. Okay, just to then we will have the sampling probabilities. What we need to do is to design the probability distribution. Okay, based on the application, what we need is that larger probabilities for more important summands. Okay, in the lecture that we saw a long time ago, we said that suppose if we want to approximate x, let x be a scalar. If we want to approximate x by a sum of scalars, then the sampling probability should be proportional to the value of x. Okay, so if x is larger, if one of the components, if xi is larger, then the probability of picking that particular xi should also be larger. So for that particular example, more important summands are those whose absolute value is greater. Yes, that becomes for them. Then we also saw an example where we did length square sampling for the matrix multiplication case. So the actually how we define more important, it depends on the specific problem. Okay, and picking the probabilities, it requires some ingenuity and command over the problem, in the sense that what do we want to, what is important and all those things. It is kind of an art as well. Then in the fourth step, after we have picked, after we have designed the probability distribution, in the fourth step, we will construct a simple matrix R by sampling. Okay, what we mean, and then we will define R as 1 upon Pi into Bi. Okay, so the probability of picking the component Bi was Pi. So we pick Bi with probability Pi, and we construct a matrix R that is the ratio of Bi and small pi. It can be verified that with such a pick, the expected value of R is equal to B. Okay, so this is important because when we looked at the Bernstein inequality, we sort of had this assumption. So when we have to evaluate the error, then we can analyze the matrix of this kind. Okay, so if we have a matrix that is B minus expected value of R or expected value of R minus B, then this will be zero mean. So we need this because we need to apply the matrix Bernstein inequality later. So we designed the matrix R in such a way that the expected value, this condition is satisfied. Next, we want to improve the quality of approximation. Okay, so we won't just pick one R, we will pick a sequence of R, a subsequence or the sequence of R. So then improve quality of approximation. Okay, so this we will do as Rn tilde is 1 by n, I is equal to 1 by small n Rk. Okay, where our each of the Rk is an independent copy of R. It it is, and we do it. I mean, with replacement, it is also possible that we can pick two BIs and in two samples. Okay, so it is not necessary that if we are picking n samples, then we will get all BIs as unique. It is possible that we will pick two of them, two or even more than. It is also possible that all n of them are same BIs. That is also possible. So we are doing it with replacement. Okay, so once we pick BI, we keep it back in the back in contention. So our goal, or in fact, today, what we are interested in, we have already looked at these steps when we discussed matrix multiplication. We have probably spent half a lecture or around on matrix multiplication. But today, what we want to do is that we want to quantify the approximation error as a function of n. Okay, so if you look at the Johnson-Lindenstrauss lemma, so there we said that if we pick if k is greater than some value, then we will get a particular guarantee. So we want to have as, okay, this is as, so we want to have such a guarantee here as well. So this is what we want. So error function of n. Okay, and this is our objective today. First, we will discuss a result which does this for the general problem. General problem in the sense that where we have B and R. Then we will look at the application of that result for the example of matrix multiplication. Okay, so in the book, the result is stated as a corollary of the Bernstein inequality. So I will also state it in the same way. So this is for matrix approximation by random sampling. Okay. So what are the considerations or the assumptions of this matrix that we have of this corollary that we have B, which is a fixed matrix. Okay, and we assume that its dimension is d1 cross d2. Then we have an approximation R such that the expected value of R is equal to B, and the spectral norm of R is also bounded. Okay? Because these two are requirements of the Bernstein inequality. That is why we have made this assumption. You can also come up with your own, and you can use some other concentration inequality to prove. Then we need, for the Bernstein inequality, we have the zero mean assumption, because we'll do B minus expected value of R. We have the spectral norm bounded, that it is bounded. Next, we need the variance statistic. Okay. So what we do here is that per sample second moment. Second moment of R, because R is our approximation. Per sample second moment of R is max. So it is the same thing. Okay. Then we have our matrix approximator. This is our R tilde n, which we have already seen. So this is the matrix approximation. So we till now we have just rewritten what we have already saw. Then the result that is there is that the expected value of R n tilde minus B is less than or equal to 2 m2R log d1 plus d2 divided by n plus 2L log d1 plus d2 divided by 3n. And then we also have that probability, that is spectral norm of the error. The probability that the spectral norm of the error is greater than t is less than or equal to d1 plus d2. Okay, so these results, they look very similar to the Bernstein inequality. We just have n, 3n here additional. If we look at the Bernstein inequality, so this is the variance statistics. There we have M2R. We have divided by n, and here also we have n. In rest of it, we have n here and there, but apart from that, it looks very similar to the Bernstein inequality. So the proof we already know because it looks so similar. The last step is applying Bernstein inequality. Okay, but then to apply Bernstein inequality, we have to analyze the error matrix. What we are given is that that the spectral norm is bounded, and the expected value of R is equal to B. Using these two information, we have to find the variance statistics here, and yeah, so that is what we will basically be doing. Okay, so the Bernstein inequality involved a sum, sum, we had SKs, and that was the sum there. So to do that, we will so there is a slight, okay, so let us just define Z as the matrix minus B, okay, because this is the matrix that we want to analyze, and in the Bunsen inequality we had expected value of Z. So r and tilde minus B, it becomes our Z. The next step is to write this as the sum of, because we need SKs, we can write this as a sum of SKs quite naturally, because Rn can be represented as a sum. So we will have something like this. Okay, we can write this in this way, and then we will have 1 over n will go away. We will have summation k is equal to 1 to n sk, and we have sk is 1 by n rk minus expected value of r. Okay, so this is how we define. So sk's are independent identically distributed and zero mean. Okay, independent by design, because we pick RK's IID and the distribution is, if you got it, and zero mean because expected value of R. Yeah, so this we had it in the assumption, and we by construction we have it such that the zero mean assumption is satisfied. So now that we have this as SK, we are interested in the spectral norm. So we can write that as by using the triangle inequality. So here we have used the triangle inequality. Uh, Next, we use Jensen on the norm. So we can take the expectation out, take the norm inside. We have used the Jensen inequality. And we already know that the spectral norm of RKs are bounded. So this will be 2L by N. Since this was our assumption. Okay. So we have got this bound on SK. Okay. So we will use this to calculate the variance statistics. The variance statistics V of Z is equal to max okay. So we have this. Then when we open this, since these are IIDs, and by that, by those considerations, we will have okay, because these, when we open this sum, and these are identically distributed and stuff like that. So expected value, the matrix expected value of S1 S1 star is positive semi-definite. So we can write that as S1 S1 star this is equal to minus 2 expected value of r minus expected value of r multiplied by r minus expected value of r conjugate transpose. Okay, this is just by definition of S1. We can replace R1 by R and those things. And since we have 1 by n for this, and we will have 1 by n for this. If you remember, we defined Sk as 1 by n. So we get n raised to the power minus 2 here. This is almost similar to the variance formula, the expression for variance that we have. But rather than having x square, we will have r transpose expected value of r multiplied by expected value of r conjugate transpose. Okay. Now notice that this is positive semi-definite. Since there is a minus sign here, we can upper bound the left hand side by r star. We can just neglect that quantity. So we have obtained an expression for the variance of z. Okay, so that is 1 by n max of expected value of r star. Okay, because here we had variance of z was n times this quantity. Then we approximated expected value of s1 star as n raised to the power minus 2 expected value of r star. So n raised to the power minus 2 and n, we will get 1 by n, and we will replace expected value of s1 star by expected value of r star. And if when we do the other way around, we will get the other expression as well, that r star r conjugate r expression. Now this is equal to m2 of r by n. Okay, so this was by assumption. We defined m2 of r to be this quantity. So we have got m2 of r by n. Now the rest of the proof is just the direct application of. So when we apply the matrix Bernstein inequality, we will get what we are looking for. So the matrix Bernstein inequality here, V of z is m2r by n, and yeah. So if we do that, we will get the required bound. Okay. So next, now that we have looked at the matrix approximation by random sampling for a general application, uh, to give an example of the random sampling method, we will analyze the matrix multiplication. Okay. Okay. So, but before going there, let us do one small step as well. Okay. So, what this bound means is that if we have n greater than 2 m2r log d1 plus d2 divided by epsilon square plus 2l log d1 plus d2 divided by 3 epsilon. So if we pick n such that this condition is satisfied, then this implies that the expected value of the error, the expected value of error is less than 2 epsilon. Okay, so given if we have a specification of epsilon that we are interested in this much error, then we can plug in the value of epsilon in this expression and find out how many samples do we need. So the flow or the idea is the same as in the Johnson-Lindenström's lemma. Okay, so there are some parallels between random projections and random sampling on how we are doing it. Okay. So next we will do, we will again look at randomized matrix multiplication. We have already looked at these things briefly a couple of times before. So we'll just breeze through it quickly this time, at least the algorithm part. So we have two matrices B and C. B is D1 cross N and C is N cross D2. What we said was that if we want to do the traditional multiplication, okay, then we would have written it as follows. The ikth entry of the product matrix BC, it can be written as, okay, this is the traditional way of multiplication, but as we discussed before, we cannot quite we want to represent, because we are doing matrix approximation, we want to approximate the product matrix, we want to write it as a sum of simpler matrices. Okay, so we want simpler matrices, so we will look at the matrix multiplication as sum of outer products. Okay, so what we mean is that BC is J is equal to 1 to N, B, the jth column of B, and the jth row of C. We have already seen how this multiplication works. I mean, when we discussed it the first time, we did the outer product using an example. But since we have already looked at it a couple of times, I'm not going to go into that in that direction. So B colon J is the jth column of B. So this is sort of like the MATLAB notation, is the jth row of C. Okay, so one can verify that this will be a D1 cross D2 matrix. So we also designed. So when we discussed matrix multiplication during the singular value decomposition, uh, when we were discussing singular value decomposition, we did something called the length squared sampling. Later, when because we have to apply the spectral norm bounds, we said that okay, we can also do the sampling in terms of the spectral norms. So when we do that, we have our probability of peaking as follows. The yeah, so these are just columns. We sort of taking sum of their lengths. Okay, so these are our sampling probabilities. So you can verify that PJs, they constitute legitimate probability distribution. Okay, one can verify that this is true. And now then, consistent with our general algorithm or the general strategy that we had discussed at the beginning of the lecture for random sampling, we construct R as follows. Okay, so we take the product of the jth column of B and the jth row of C. We divide it by their sampling probability Pj. This is R. And then we define Rn tilde as, okay, yeah, k is equal to 1 to n of Rk. This is again just where each Rk is an independent copy of R. When we do all these things, we okay, I'll just write it as capital N because we will have an index here as well. But we added tilde. Okay, so never mind. These are the semantics. So we have. So this was our target matrix, and r tilde n is our approximation. The expected value of approximation should be equal to our target. Okay. Then the question that we asked there again, I mean, which we ask again, is that how does the error depends on number of samples n. Okay, so this is the question that we are interested in. So next we'll move on to the analysis part. Because we already have the result for the corollary, or all we have to do is to do some analysis so that we can directly apply the result of the corollary. Okay, so in the corollary which we saw, we had these conditions. Everything was given in terms of R, that the spectral norm of R was bounded by L. So the first thing that we need is a bound on the spectral norm of R. Then once that is done, we need to find the per sample second moment. So these are the two things that we want to do here. Here our R is given by this quantity. So we want to find the bounds on the spectral norm of R. So that is what we will do as the first step. So we can write this as maximum okay. So yeah, since Pj does not, Pj is a scalar. So we have this quantity this here with us. Just again to recall, our Pj was okay. So when we substitute the value of Pj here, what we obtain is that the spectral norm of R is less than or equal to the sum of the Frobenius norm squared of C and B, and max over J. The rest of the expression, it more or less remains the same. Okay, so whenever we have quantities like this, so we can use the relation between arithmetic and geometric mean. Okay, so we know that the arithmetic mean is greater than equal to the geometric mean. When we apply this result for jth row of B and jth column, then what we obtain is okay. So we can just replace this whole inequality by 1 by 2, because this quantity will come down. We can replace this whole inequality by 1 by 2. And when we do this, what we obtain is that the spectral norm of R is less than or equal to by 2. Okay, so we just uh, we replace this whole quantity by 1 by 2, and what we obtained is this expression. Now we can sort of simplify this by making certain assumptions. So we are saying that the eigenvalues are normalized for the C and B matrix. The result is valid even can be extended to the case when they are not normalized. Then, so there is the concept of stable rank of a matrix. This we have discussed earlier as well. So the stable rank of a matrix B is nothing but the ratio of the Frobenius norm squared divided by the spectral norm. Okay, but here since we have assumed that the spectral norm is unity, so this is the stable rank of B, and the Frobenius norm squared is the stable rank of C. Stable rank of B plus stable rank of C divided by 2. Okay, so we name this quantity as the average stable rank. Average stable rank. Yeah, I mean, these are just semantics. I mean, it makes the inequality looks somewhat less intimidating. So there is some logic behind why the stable rank definition is in this way. Okay, but anyway, so we have the bound on the spectral norm of R. So this becomes our L, capital L, from the corollary or from the Bernstein inequality. Next, we are interested in the uh, per sample second moment. Okay, so this is what we are interested in. So the per sample second moment of R is J is equal to 1 to N. Okay, so this is the expected value of R star. So this is, we have just used the formula for the expected value, that with probability Pj we will pick this entry. Okay, so we have just used the formula for the expected value, and in the next step we will just, so this will get cancelled, we will substitute the value of Pj. What we obtain is so this we obtain this by direct substitution of Pj. Since this quantity is independent of the sum, we can write as here we have just broken down the transpose. So when we break the transpose, the order of these quantities will be interchanged. We will have Cj transpose. and that becomes the norm, and whatever is remaining there. So the calculation is sort of straightforward. Then we have the Frobenius norms squared, and we will have V star. Okay, I mean, because this. Okay, so how we get this is that this this is a fraction that lies between 0 and 1, so we can just take 1 on all the sides, and this is positive semi-definite. Okay, bj star is positive semi-definite. Since this is positive, if we want to maximize, we just take the upper bound of this ratio, and that is how we got this bound. And we can do the same steps for r star r as well, r star or the conjugate transpose. So we will, for that we will obtain r conjugate transpose, and we will have the same expression. Only the only this step will change. The rest of the things will be the same. And here we will have C transpose C. Okay. So now when we combine those two things, now we wanted the second bound on the second moment. So the bound on the second moment was expected value of r star, expected value of r star r. So next we just substitute the value of the bounds. So what we will have is square plus, okay. Now this is equal to, okay, this is because and we assume that the spectral norm is 1. So this is what we have. So we can write this as 2 times the average stable rank. So now we have the second order statistic in terms of the average stable rank, and we also have the bound on the matrix R in terms of the average stable rank. So now that we have these two things, we can apply the corollary directly. Okay, so when we apply the corollary directly, we know the value of M2 of R. M2 of R is bounded by 2 times the average stable rank, and we know the value of L. L is the average stable rank. So we can obtain these inequalities. And again, even in the case of matrix multiplication, because this is an important consideration, that how many samples do we need if the error tolerance is epsilon. The same result will be valid for the matrix multiplication case as well. We just have to substitute the value of M2 of R and L. Okay, so if we want to improve the error by epsilon, then we need to sample, then the sampling will be proportional to epsilon square. Okay, so we need many samples, many more samples in terms of epsilon, because we need to sample it in proportion to 1 upon epsilon square. Yeah, so that concludes today's discussion on ma- random matrix approximation by random sampling. So we looked at the general scheme of matrix approximation by random sampling, and we looked at a specific case or a specific example of matrix multiplication. We also looked at the, while doing all these things, we have looked at an application of the matrix Bernstein inequality. This is the second application of the matrix Bernstein inequality that we are looking at. One was the uh, in the very first lecture when we had the sample covariance estimator. Okay, so we have looked at these two applications of the matrix Bernstein inequality. Generally, for applying the matrix Bernstein inequality, we need that the spectral bound should be bounded. Sorry, the spectral norm of the matrices of the matrix of the or of the samples that we need, they should be bounded, and we need to be able to write what we want to approximate in terms of independent sums. Okay, so these are the two requirements for from the matrix Bernstein inequality. Okay, yeah.